unless full interpretation.
Okay, let's start this. It is September the 20th, 2022. We are interviewing John Williams Jr. for the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial. John, please go ahead. We talked about you were in the Marine Corps and the Air Force.
Yes, I joined the Marines first because I wanted to be a warrior. You know, that's when you're a kid, that's what you want to do. And then I served 4.5 years, 4 years, 4 months, 22 days in the Marine Corps. I got out for a year. I had this little bit of PTSD problem because I had one of my friends. We didn't call it that back then. We just call it guilt complex. You know, so I figured I would go ahead and join the Air Force and volunteer to go to the combat zone and survive the gauntlet of fire and get on with my life. So I waited a year, joined the Air Force, and I was sent to 8th Air Force Headquarters, Westover, SAC, and I waited a few months and volunteered for Vietnam. And they sent me to a psychiatrist, figured there's something wrong with me. Nobody from 8th Air Force had ever volunteered to go to Vietnam, except for me. So they, after interviewing, I told them I need to get sent to the gauntlet, someplace, the worst place they could send me, so I could go through the gauntlet of fire and survive, so I could get on with my life. I was drinking too much, smoking too much, I need to do something, you know. So the colonel said, no problem, we can handle that. So you know, after I did some work around there and did some work that embarrassed the shop because they had an MD3 that needed repaired, and they said that the 36-man shop said they couldn't do it. And this time here, I was kicked out of the shop. I was working for the ground power people, you know, down the way, and so I repaired his MD3, which they said was impossible, and I did that in 3 days, and the colonel was extremely pleased and upset the shop because they told the wing commander it could not be repaired. So I got me sent to Guam, so I quickly volunteered for the advanced party, go to Guam. So I went to Guam and I was involved in the arc light Guam 110 B-52s, you know. So that was interesting. Then as I was in Guam, my orders for Vietnam arrived, and so when I left Guam about my 200th day, they left me, my squadron left me there. They all rotated back in Westover and left me there thinking that was PCS. So I finally got a chance to get out of there on my about 200th day, and I process in with one hand and process out with the other hand. And that's how I ended up getting to Vietnam. And I was sent to Da Nang, 68 and 69. I got there June the 10th. And it was so hot, when I got off the plane, it felt like I stepped into a sauna. It was really terribly hot, very intense heat. And so we were processed in.
What month and year was that?
Okay, I arrived there on June the 10th, 1968. And it was hot, like I said. And when I was processing in, they gave me this pamphlet. This is the original pamphlet I was given.
Hold it up a little bit. Yeah.
This is my 366 FMS squadron pamphlet for the base. So they gave that to me to read, and I didn't bother reading it till I got back from Vietnam. But I discovered from reading it, though, that we could have had a good time there, I guess. But I was working quite often, you know, 6-7 days a week. I was doing a blue collar job. You know, blue collar worker doing a blue collar job, just repairing aircraft. You know, that's my job. You know, I went to Chinook to work on F4s, the titanium horizontal stabilizer. So that was a secret metal at that time. So I was sent to work on that. So that's why I was sent to Da Nang to work on F4s.
You want to explain what an F4 is?
An F4 is the most powerful airplane jet we had. I tell you, when you hear one of them take it off down the runway, you had to think that the enemy was shuddering in their shoes, because that thing was a powerful fighter jet. It had overpowered engines so that it could survive a dogfight, and so if they needed to, they could hit the afterburners and go straight up. And they had the ability, because of the stress factors built into the aircraft, it could come straight down and level off and land, which was very important because it helped us to survive during that time frame. And the people there were, we had, you hear stories about one guy, he said he was trying to get a 4F, and he was trying to act like he was crazy. I heard stories about him, I never witnessed it until about my 6th month there, but he was carrying a ball and chain around in the dusty areas all day. And I think he really pulled a fast one to everybody because he wasn't working, you know. But within about my 2nd or 3rd, I think about my 3rd week, I was trying to go to Quang Tri to visit some of my Marine Corps friends, and squadron commander called me in the office. The wing commander was there, and they informed me that I had a $10,000 bounty placed on me. And I asked, how could this happen? They said, oh, the VC did it. And I said, that's a lie. I said, that's a lie. The VC wouldn't do that to me. I'm a sheet metal, I'm structural repair. There's no way, that maybe a Marine leader or squad leader or somebody, sniper might get us that kind of a bounty, but not me. Because Marines were only given basically a $5,000 bounty put on them. And here they put a $10,000 bounty. I said, it wasn't the VC that did it. So I said, now who did it? So the wing commander looked at each other and said, well, your reputation preceded you here, which told me immediately that probably 8th Air Force headquarters might have done it. And it's not unusual. I've talked to other people who are Vietnam vets that ran into similar situations. So this is, I guess, probably a common occurrence that we weren't really aware of at the time. But so they said to keep me alive, I had to work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. That way I wouldn't think about my problem. And I was grounded to base. I couldn't leave base. And so I worked all the time. Worked 10, 12 hours a day. That's all you do is work. And then in my spare time, I went to the tape club, which was part of the USO there, and I went there and taped never-ending impressions of Platters and John Coltrane and Count Basie. I taped a lot of those tapes. I still have them. They're still real at home, and don't have a place to play them anymore. But I do have the reels at home. And the time there when you're there, you just don't imagine the stress that's involved, and I wasn't aware of that at all for a while until about my 4th or 5th month there when my hair all fell out. And I guess that was just the stress of thinking that anybody could be trying to collect that bounty on me. So it really put you under a very stressful situation. But yeah, I just had a job to do, and I just did it, and that's all I survived. We had my friends there where I had Sergeant Harper. We had an F4, number 1F Force D, I think it was, a 543 that the pilot fixated to the target, mowed some treetops, lost his belly, lost his engine, and managed to limp the aircraft back to Da Nang and landed. Well, the squadron commander had already been down to Back V headquarters explaining why he had 2 wrecks, because the way things operated, you get 3 wrecks, the commander's replaced. We were going through quite a few commanders in 68, 69, so he was down at Saigon explaining why he had 2 wrecks when this 3rd one happened. So when he came back from Saigon, he ordered me to go ahead and repair it, because the depot maintenance wouldn't touch it. It was so extensive. So I grabbed Sergeant Harper and Sergeant Max Smith, and we both worked on it together and did it, I think it was 3 months, which was pretty good, because we gave him an E-Tech of 3 months or something, and we were about 3 days past our E-Tech, so I thought that's pretty good, Pretty good job we did there, because we had to do our other work besides whenever it popped up, so that was interesting. I know one time we had 2 F-100s land, and I was called out to investigate it, check it out, and write up. I loved to red X things, because if I could red X an item.
What kind of planes were the F-100?
F-100 was a little fighter plane, had 1 engine in it, and these 2 second lieutenants brought it in from Thailand and landed, and they had some major problems with it, so I went out and looked at it, and had 4 inches of the leading edge of the wing was gone. You could tell the skin had lifted over the top of the wings, lost a lot of rivets, hundreds of rivets were missing. The tank tips on the end of the wings were gone, and one of the missile pieces that they have on the aircraft there to hold the missiles, one of them had been ripped off due to wind, the shear. these aircraft weren't designed for this. So I looked at the two lieutenants and the colonel, and I said, you guys decided you're gonna take these aircraft and hot rod it, race it to Da Nang. I said, what you did was you opened it up full blast and you took off. I said, these planes are not designed to fly full blast all the way over. They're only do that during a dogfighting, not to drive from Thailand to Da Nang. And because they drove it so fast, the wind sheared off everything. And they denied it at first, but I stuck to my story. I said, that's what happened. And so finally they broke down and told the commander, yeah, they hot-rodded the aircraft to Da Nang and lost the wings. So it was interesting. I remember one time a C-141 transport plane landed, the major landed it. He was really scared because they had a 6-foot hole in the door, the wing well, the wheel well door, and he wanted to be this thing repaired so he can go back to Thailand. He did not want to spend a night at Da Nang because we were called Rocket Alley. The name was called Rocket Alley because we were getting hit by every other day. So he did not want to spend the night. So I smiled real big and grabbed my clipboard and got my red pen and went out there and I right next to the aircraft and said, well, I'm going to have to ground it for a couple of days. We got to do a permanent repair on it. And he came over to me real quick and said, I'm a major. I can override your Red X. You have to put a temporary repair on it. He says, now I need a repair on that thing now so I can get out of here tonight. So I put a 6-foot repair on that door there so he could leave, and he just terrified. That's sort of amazing in a way, and we were there all the time. We had to live there, yet these people that visited us were only there for hours. Even a general came one night and landed, and then during the night the VC placed 4 rockets all around his aircraft, front, back, side, to let him know that they had every inch of Da Nang marked out. They could place a rocket any place they wanted. And he scurried out of there the next day. We had to work on his aircraft. In fact, they had half the shop working on his aircraft, and then the C-123K defoliation aircraft parked near it, and it got hit really good. So they had me on that aircraft. Put 22 patches on it. One was over with 4 other patches. I beveled all my patches, rounded the corner, so today I can look at that aircraft, point out every one of my patches. Took me 14 hours of work, and I was drenched with some kind of chemicals. So I asked the crew chief, what have you been spewing out of this aircraft for the last 30 days? And he said the ancient blue, green, and orange. Well, I'd never heard of that, but I knew it was defoliation, so I figured I better go take a shower, wash my clothes. And not knowing better, I put them back on again the next day. But that was interesting, and I think if you think about it, I have this idea sometimes, when you think about the tour over there, what could be the worst time you were there? What would qualify for the worst time? And I think the worst time I was there, there's actually several of them really, but I think the number one would be when I was working one night. For some reason I worked 11 hours one night and I got off of work, and as I was walking back I heard a humming noise. Now this occurred about 3 weeks after an Army Ranger contacted me out there on a flight line. He knew all about me. He explained all about me. He knew I was a Marine, I had a bounty on me, and I was a miracle worker, I was a metallurgist, and blah, blah, blah. He showed me his hooch, which was loaded with enough ammunition to outfit a company. And he said, when the VC overruns us, he said, this is what we got to come here and protect ourselves. Well, that scared me because by saying that when they overrun us, it tells me that it's inevitable. Somebody has already decided we're going to get overrun. That really terrified me, so that I kept my ears and eyes open after that. And I went ahead and I heard this humming noise, so I climbed up over the revetment wall, looked over, and there's this camouflage C-130 sitting there with the rear cargo door down, and the humming noise was from a little generator with a light on it, and there's a sergeant standing there with a notepad and not writing off as he's all field grade officers on Da Nang with carrying a ditty bag. We're all boarding this aircraft in the middle of the night. And I was working till at least 11 o'clock, so this had to be occurring around 11 o'clock at night. And so they all, once I laid there on top of that revetment until they all boarded the aircraft, and the hatch went back up, cargo door went back up, and the aircraft had no lights on whatsoever. And they taxied out the runway, and I noticed the runway was all in red lights only, which doesn't go very far. Yeah, it's good for nighttime operations, and all of a sudden I heard it take off. So I figured immediately they were going to MACV headquarters for safekeeping, which means, in my way of thinking, that they have already given up the name. We were expendable, and they've already decided that the VC could have the name. And then what really bothered me about this, and when this happened that night, was that we were never given any briefings. You know, I only remember one intel briefing the whole time I was there, and then it was wrong. They didn't even have the correct number made. They said that, oh, the base was surrounded by 3,000 VC. I found out later it was over 7,000. It wasn't 3,000. So, you know, so this told me, you know, we had a problem. So I tried to go back to sleep, and I could not sleep. I laid there and I said, man, you know, you gotta do something. And with my Marine Corps training, I figured, you know, let's go ahead and do something. So next morning I got up very early, grabbed me a work order close to the officers' quarters, the ops building, and went out there and went in, and they told me it's only for, you know, enlisteds aren't allowed in here. I told them I would need to talk to a ranking captain. And so I told the ranking captain my story I just witnessed, and I told him, don't believe me. I said, don't believe me, just verify it. Then when you find out I'm right, come back and get me. I'm over here working. We need to work up some kind of strategy. So he did, he contacted. Funny, this lieutenant came over in a Jeep, just white as a sheet, trembling, and we went to the ops building. They had the oval table there, and the captains told me to sit down. He introduced me to everybody, and he went on and told that I'm the one that repaired that aircraft, F4 543, that had the belly gone missing on it, and the engine dropped down. I rebuilt it, and I was a metallurgist, you know, a miracle worker and all that, so he said to listen to me. And so we worked up strategy, what we can do. I reminded the captain that when the people were operating, we were under options that, not options, but we were under orders that whenever they did a pre-flight, they had to do it 24 hours ahead of time so that they could notify the Vietnamese authorities to get their approval. So then the next day when we flew the sorties, naturally the VC knew about it, and they weren't there. You know, when you drop the bombs and all that strafing area. It was just one of those little policies that we have with the government that was not beneficial to us. And so I told the captain, I said, now we're not under that obligation now. They've abandoned the base, they've abandoned us, we're expendable, and we don't have to follow those orders anymore. So now we have total access to the intelligence, we need to access it, and we need to get out there and just bomb the hell out of the enemy. And so I told him we need to immediately have a commander's call, act like you're an academy graduate, get out there, and you need to tell the people what they got to do. You tell the people what they're going to have to work. Tell them what's going on, and tell them that they're going to have to work and support the aircraft. The aircraft's going to have to use the afterburners, go up, because I told them to take off the base. Don't take off normally because they'll get shot down. Take off and hit the afterburner, come back, come straight down and land. I said, the F4s can take it. They're designed for it. So I said, that's what we're going to have to do. I said, you guys do your job and we'll have to work. So guess what he did? Had a commander's call. Immediately, he told everybody what they had to do, that this is what we're going to do, this is what you're going to do. We're going to have to work our butts off, and we're going to have to do a lot of work, a lot of overtime to get this, pull this off. And here I am today, which means that we succeeded.
When was this in your?
This was 10 of 69. I don't remember the exact date, but I remember that, I don't know, a few weeks later, I guess, I remember seeing all of a sudden, middle of the night, the field grade officers reappeared, which told me then that I guess we won, that the problem was no longer a valid problem, that it had, you know, we had survived, we accomplished our goal. And it just irritates me even to this day that they did this without notifying anybody. They actually had given up, we could have all been POWs or killed. We did not get no intel briefings, we did not get notified, they just snuck out in the middle of the night. And I'll tell you what, that kind of behavior shows nothing. To me, the reason I think you don't see too much advertised on it Tet Offensive 69 is because it shows the incompetence and cowardice of our leaders. And we had a lot of them.
Was this all Air Force or was this multiple services? Because Da Nang had
And they had
multiple,
Marines on one side, we were on the other side, yes.
we being the Air Force.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we be in the Air Force, yeah. They had Marines on the other side, you know, I talked to a Marine later on, you know, he said, yeah, there are over 7,000 VC around the base, you know, because we were across the street from each other. That's how close they were. So when you guys start strafing and bombing, you know, you did a phenomenal job there, you know, by saving the base, you know, saving us all of our lives. So the Air Force there, I really got to give those pilots compliment and praise for doing a superb job. Because, you know, this is stuff that they weren't geared for, you know, they're not trained for it. It's just when you're been abandoned, you've been given up, you have to do something. And, you know, you'd be surprised at the abilities that humans have, the resources that they have. They can be totally exhausted and go out there and do just that much more. And that's good. That's the kind of stuff you saw out there during that Tet Offensive 69 problem we had. But yeah, we had, I had another worse problem too. When I was in the shower one day, I was in the shower and all of a sudden 2 magazines load was emptied into the shower. And time stopped me. Just when I went into it, I spaced out, I guess. Time just slowed down. And I could hear the bullets piercing the shower, going through, all around me. I was thinking, do I turn left? Do I turn right? Do I hit the ground? And I was afraid to do anything for fear I'd pick up a bullet that wasn't meant for me. So I just stood still, didn't move, and the bullets just whizzed all around me through the metal Quonset hut we used for a shower, right on the edge of the perimeter. You had the barracks, you had the aircraft, the preventment wall, the barracks, the bathrooms, and then the fence. And then you know, that's the edge of the base, the perimeter there. So yeah, so they.
Do you know who was shooting?
Well, it sounded like a AK-47 to me, and it was they emptied 2 magazines. You know, there's quite a few bullets in each magazine, and they were obviously on the other side of the fence. You know, and so when they got all done, I don't know how long I was in there, how long I was in it this days, but I finally realized that I wasn't bleeding. I thought, sure, I'd be bleeding. How can you not get hit? And so I feel the good Lord probably, you know, sent an angel down to protect me that day. But I made the mistake, you know, how cocky young men are, you know, I was you know, cocky, I guess. So when I wrapped my towel around me and got out of the shower, went up to they had the inseals on the 2nd floor. First termers, bottom floor, sandbag, all lifers, top floor, 2nd floor in the barracks. So I got up there at the barracks, I turned around, I yelled out, "Hey, you missed me." And all of a sudden, thud, the bullet landed an inch from my head. I scared the living hell out of me then. I went running into barracks, I threw a flak jacket on, I threw a steel helmet on. Here, I'm running around with a steel helmet, flak jacket on, I'm naked. And so one of the guys, you know, took a picture of me, waist up, thank God. But that was a bad incident. And I think this is what I looked like in the Marine, in Vietnam. I was a sergeant. I started out here in 1st class, but they changed their rank, so I became buck sergeant. And that one incident I'm going to tell about right now, this is a Russian-made rocket. And this is another worse incident when I was out there one day, and I was walking towards the bus stop, left the barracks, and I always wondered what happens. You hear a rocket first, you know, I heard a whistle, and by that time it's too late because it boom, and it landed 8 feet from me and went poof, spread dirt all over me. A piece of shrapnel went through my uniform, ripped a little hole across my uniform there, and everybody come running over. I thought I shit my pants. I stood there, I was frozen, and the guys come over there, wondered if I was all right. I said, yeah, I'm fine. So I had to go down the hole, dig up there. Partial rocket, because it went poof instead of boom. If it had gone boom, it'd blown a 30-foot diameter hole. You know, 122 millimeter Russian-made rocket there, they'd blow a big hole. This was just a little poof. So I got missed, you know, so I had them dig it up. Here's a picture of it to prove that it happened. And that was it, really, as far as my worst case incidents. My best time in Vietnam was when we won that little conflict about the repelling the enemy from overrunning the base. They never did overrun the base, so to me that was the best time of all of my life, you know, was that time there that they did not overrun the base. I mean, I got a lot of their best times too, I suppose.
Well, sure.
I made it out there alive, you know. Let's see. That was really it. I can't really think of any other best times except for the fact I just, I think there was one which was funny. We never had a party ever. All these shops, all these squatters are having parties everywhere. In our shop, I never had one, so I said, you know what, we could do something about that. So I went ahead and I volunteered to take over the inventory of all of our parts and everything, and I wrote up justification to get a refrigerator with a freezer, because we had to have icebox rivets to repair the fuel tanks of these wet wing aircraft. That's when you put the fuel directly into the wing, not the bladder. And so you have to have icebox rivets, but to have icebox rivets, you have to have a freezer. So I used that excuse to get a refrigerator with a freezer. So when it came in, I bought a bunch of pop soda, put it in there, told them a nickel bottle, and we can keep replenishing it. And we had a spot now for steaks. So I told everybody from now on, we're not gonna do nothing free. Anybody who comes in and wants anything done, like a hydraulic line made or anything, charge it. And the bigger the item, the more we charge. You know, quarter box of steaks, half a box of steaks, or a full box of steaks. And so Major comes in, wanted me to build him a heater for his sauna. He had his wife sitting in the redwood sauna, but he didn't have a heater for it. So he designed it, I modified it. I looked at it, I said, we can make this out of stainless steel, I'll engrave it for you, make it pretty, but it's gonna cost you a case of steaks. Oh, I can't do that. I said, well, here's your blueprints back, I can't make it. And I turned around and sure enough, you know, he came back a couple weeks later with a case of steaks. So we threw them in our freezer. When the monsoon rains got over and the sun came back out, we had a steak party. You know, and so it was pretty neat, good for morale, you know. We had a steak party. One of the young men, James, Airman First Class James Smith, said, you know what, he said, there's nothing to do around here. I said, well, you and your friend are good mechanics, you told me. I said, go around all the dumps around the name. Dig up all these car parts and everything so you can have, you know, you can build your Jeep. Build yourself a Jeep. So right in the middle of monsoon season, he calls me over, he had this Jeep that they had built. It's like a brand new vehicle. It was humming great. Well, guess what happened? Colonel Manning happened to be the maintenance chief, and he was somewhat of a hard ass, I guess you could say. Our BX was outside the gate of the gate. And so he was out there at the BX one day, he decided to go back to the barracks, and on his way there, he saw some guy out there out of regulation, out of 3510 reg. He didn't have a hat on. So he stopped his Jeep, jumped out, and jumped all over this guy for not having a hat on, and his Jeep blew up. So somebody tried to sabotage his Jeep and try to blow him up. And so he was so happy, he scared to death, first of all. He was terrified for a couple of weeks. But then he came over to our shop and said, you know, your UDLs, your listing, it tells you what you're authorized. He said, let me look at it. Oh, I don't see a Jeep here. You guys are not authorized a Jeep. I need a Jeep. So he took our Jeep, you know. Then he told me, come over there and said, I want you to build me an Eagle. So I made him a beautiful Eagle, carved, you know, about 40 thousandths aluminum. It was so pretty, I decided to keep it. Well, somebody squealed because next thing I know, he's running in there at one of his Eagle. And he placed it around the front of his Jeep, you know. Then he called me back in later, wanted me to build a plastic hooch over the top of it because it was raining during the monsoon. He didn't want to get wet. So I built a plexiglass aluminum frame over the Jeep, you know, so he would be dry. So those are funny things you think about it, you know. It was hilarious, really. So I like to think of that as being a good time, you know, when you were there. But I think that the best time, that second best time, was surviving a shower incident, knowing that somebody was trying to collect that bounty on me, and it just scared me to death to have that happen.
How old were you when that happened? So
Well,
how old were you when you were in Vietnam?
I was pretty old when I was in Vietnam. I was an old man, basically, because I had already served 4.5 years in the Marine Corps, and I got out for a year. So I was 18 when I joined, so I was about 18, 19, 21, 20, 23. So I was probably about 23, 24 maybe when I joined, got sent to Vietnam, so 25 I think, somewhere around there. And So I was no man compared to these kids, you know. I mean, you see them all arrive on the planes, they all look like young kids. Then when they leave, they look like old worn out men, you know. And so if I was, I think that I think if I was to have a best time again, I had so many best times, it's hard to find one. But one was when they woke me up in the middle of the night, told me I could go home. That they escorted me home. They had cops on both sides. They held the aircraft up. They woke me up in the middle of the night, gave me a ticket, told me to leave all my uniforms behind. I couldn't take them with me. We went out. They escorted me, guards on both sides like I was a prisoner, and I was not on the manifest. They put me on the aircraft. I had no place to sit. It was full, so I got to sit with the stewardesses. That was tough, you know, really. But then we left, you know, I was able to get out of there alive. So that was good. I really enjoyed that.
So did you leave ahead of your regular
Oh yeah, I
date?
wasn't even there. I left 18th of May. I was supposed to be there till the end of May, early June. You know, I got there 10th of June. I didn't even serve my 12 months. They were scared. You see, here's the problem is that because I had the bounty put on me, they were afraid if I got killed on their watch, they wouldn't get promoted. So that's why they grounded me at base. That's why, you know, what they didn't know was one day, you know, before the monsoons hit, in civilian clothes, I snuck off base. I went down there to the China Beach to see if we had evacuation, and I noticed the harbor was mine, China Beach was mine. They had an area around the tennis courts cleared off, and I was able to go there only just to the tennis courts, you know, to the hooch there they had so I took 3 pictures. I still have them, you know, at China Beach. But I discovered there's no way you can go through China Beach for any type of evacuation. So I came back and I discovered the atmosphere off base with the Army. Everybody worked so well together. They were cheerful. Come back on base, it's just so negative and so disheartening. And just people were they just were not friendly at all.
Was that your only experience off base in Denver?
Oh yeah, that was my only time. I was grounded to base. I couldn't go off base, except for the BX now, which was 20 feet off base. But it's just sad, you know, because you just don't know. You hear these horror stories one time, you know. I mean, I don't know what happened, but I saw a little baby. We were at the BX, you know, and I saw a little baby, fat little baby, walking towards all the. You know, we were all gathered up waiting for the bus or something. And I don't know if he was mined or booby-trapped or not, but we heard stories, you know, that they would take these babies and put TNT around them and make them fat, and then they walk them into a bunch of military personnel and blow them up, right? So I saw that happen. I yelled at everybody, I said, you know, that you can't trust it, you better, you know, get away. And I turned around and I didn't look back. And somewhere I did hear a boom back there behind me, but it showed you how callous you get. You know, I never looked back. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it really happened or if it didn't, you know. I have no way of knowing. You get to the point where we had coffins lined up like you wouldn't believe. You know, people who died, they had their coffin, vacuum balloon coffins. They were lined up, and I don't know how high, probably about 10 feet high. Just rows and rows and rows up out there. It's just mind-boggling when you had to walk by all these coffins thinking these are all dead soldiers and military personnel, and the coffins are just sitting there. They're not going anywhere. You know, and when you get rockets, you know, and we got rockets almost every day, and you get to the point where you just sleep through them. You don't even bother getting up, you know, and you can tell. I was at chow hall one morning when that rocket came screaming overhead. You could hear it going right overhead, it landed behind me, and so they chased everybody out of the chow hall, and I was still sitting there eating because I didn't want to throw my breakfast away. I was hungry. So I stayed there and ate. They probably had to come and force me out of there, you know, because I wouldn't leave. But you just get so callous, you know. You don't want to jump in these bunkers because the Air Force had the worst bunkers in the world. They were built above ground, 2 feet of dirt, plywood bunkers. You know, I jumped in one time, rocket landed out there, and it shook. I thought it was going to cave in on me. So I never went to a bunker again. I just go down the bottom step of the barracks and sit down. And one day, Sergeant Fowler, the tech sergeant, we had the boss, he was up on the second floor there, and a rocket landed out there, you know, and he went flying out the door, forgot to go down the stairs. You know how hard, this is a 2x4 railing around there, 2x4. And he went right through that railing, cracked some ribs, broke an ankle, you know. So he was on light duty for quite a while, but you just do
So you were
stupid
never
things.
injured while you were there?
No, I was never injured at all. Never, you know, that when that bullet went through my uniform, yeah, I didn't look. I might have had a red line there, but there's no way in hell I'm going to go to sick call to get a Purple Heart for a damn red line. So I just, you know, I never turned it in. I never went in. In fact, I felt bad because I had one kid that always complained and bitching all the time. And I called up a guy I knew at the clinic there at the first aid, at the hospital. And I said, listen, I'm going to have this guy come in tomorrow morning. I said, put him in the worst ward you have. Because I'm tired of him complaining. So he said, okay, I can do that, John. So next morning he come in there complaining again. So I said, listen, go to sick call right now. So he went to sick call and the guy put him in the worst ward in there. And what happened? A general landed and came right to that ward and gave everybody that Purple Heart. And he looked at this kid and asked him, what's wrong with you? I don't know what story he told him, but he got a Purple Heart out of it. I couldn't believe it. When the next couple of days later I talked to him and said, hey, you got to give that back. You don't deserve that. But guess what though? I never pulled a stunt like that again. You know, I learned my lesson. But you know, one thing also, because I was a Marine, they wanted me to volunteer to be offload the help medevac choppers. Because when they had the people offload the medevac choppers, most of the Air Force people use that for 10, 12 hours a day. You know, these Air Force guys, they get so rattled, they got to give them sedatives and send them home. So they said, oh, you're a Marine, you like blood, guts, and gore and stuff. So I got volunteered for medevac. Okay, so I got to do this for 12 hours a day, medevac these kids off. And one kid, the first one, I remember the first one vividly. He was only half there, and he wanted a cigarette. He said, my God, he said, here I am dying, nobody will give me a cigarette. I was smoking then, so I gave him a cigarette. Well, guess what? The guy was out there, other end of the thing there that was helping me, he turned me in. So the officer there at the hospital jumped all over me and said, you can't talk to these people, you can't give them cigarettes. You leave, just unload the helicopters, that's all your job is, unload and bring them here. Well, I said, you can fire me then. Because I said, if they want a cigarette, they're getting a cigarette. So I remember the second one, it was all blood everywhere, he was unconscious. Then I told myself, I'm going to be totally insane here if I don't do something. So I had learned self-hypnosis. So I decided to play a little game of self-hypnosis and forget this incident. So all the time I got volunteered for empty medevac, I don't remember any of it. Because I knew that if I did, it would affect me for life. So I just used self-hypnosis to erase it from my memory. So, but yeah, that's what I tell you what. If I have any advice for anybody, it'd be this. I say, if you get yourself a gut instinct, that means God's talking to you. You better act on it because you and your friends lives can depend on it. Because I said this is important in combat. And everybody's got red blood, so everybody's a brother and sister. There's no such thing as any type of problems there. And I also remember that if you, when you're trying to enhance your careers, study and education gets you anywhere. If you want to become anything, you can make it through education. And if you're for your career specialty, you need to volunteer for all types of classes that can help you in your progression, make any rank. And
What kind of classes did you take through the military?
Anything they had that I could take. I took leadership schools. I was all through my military career. I was at leadership school, NCO Academy, senior NCO academies. I volunteered to take classes. I got an associate degree in Georgia Military Tech, so through your military career field. Also, your career field has a degree program through your career field. When I got into the Air Force, I became a photo interpreter analyst. They call it imagery interpreter now, so I tried to get a degree through that, but I must have irritated some people, so they made sure I didn't get it. But it's okay. I don't
Have
mind.
you used your
GI Bill?
Well, I was going to say your airplane mechanics.
No, I can't use my knowledge I learned about aircraft because I'm legally blind on both eyes.
Oh.
I can't join the military. And so the only way I got in the military, I said a prayer to God, said, God, I gotta pass the eye test in Chicago. So it took me 3.5 hours to pass the eye test. The ophthalmologist said, I don't know how you're doing this because you can't see, you're blind, legally blind. I got what's called ocular histoplasmosis, which means I should be having a cane right now. But the good Lord stepped in on me, allowed me to be blind in one eye, and I got 20/20 in the other eye. So when I took the eye test, I realized that to pass, I said a prayer each time, and it flashed perfect each time. And I figured to pass this, I need to just find the minimum to pass my left eye, and you hit that mark and stick with it. Then my right eye, go ahead and do what I can. So I was able to get into the Marine Corps. Then the guy in the Marine Corps said, in basics, I don't know how the hell you made it here because you're blind, you can't make it here. But he said, I'm gonna kick you out of the rifle range because you gotta shoot 60 bullets, 50 with your dominant eye, 10 with your non-dominant eye at the alpha range, which means you can't qualify if you don't hit with your non-dominant eye. So I qualified, put all the bullets in the target of my right eye because I'm pretty close to V ring. And so the left eye, I just positioned a rifle the same way I did my right arm. I figured if I just pulled the bullets 10 times, I might miss it. So I pulled it one at a time and I wiggled the rifle around a little bit, thinking maybe I could hit the target a few times. And I hit the target enough times where I passed by 1 point. And all that DI was so mad. He said, look at those two guys there. He said, they got 20/20 vision, both eyes, and I gotta kick them out because they didn't qualify. Here you are blind and you qualified. I don't know how in the world you could have done that. But, my first year in the Marine Corps, then they offered me 96, 94% disability. I said, I can't accept that. That's not the honorable thing to do. So I was allowed to stay in the Marines 4.5 years. So that was interesting, So that was any other questions you might have?
Yeah, a lot of questions. Do you ever see or communicate with any of the men you served with?
Okay, I joined TogetherWeServe.com, which is a good organization for all military personnel or ex-military personnel. I became a lifetime member from the Air Force side, and a lifetime member on the Marine Corps side, and they have a little interview. So you go through the interview there, and it's really helpful. And I did contact, a friend of mine did contact me, Maxie Hairsmith. I worked in Vietnam. He was in North Carolina. He contacted me, and we were able, he clarified me because I had the wrong aircraft number down on that. I put down 643 that we worked on. He said, no, it's 543. So he corrected me on that, so I had to put that in.
But I mean, has a group gotten together like that worked?
The only group I went to was a sister squadron in North Carolina about 7 or 8 years ago. I went to there, and we were all in the CRARE for that 65 operation, that secret CIA war that we won, and San Domingo, and they were all part of that group, that task force. And I went to their reunion, and I had this little booklet I bought before I got out of the Marine Corps, the Wing published a book. Nobody knew about it. I had a copy of it. They wrote that, if you see pictures of you in there, write your names down. So they were a sister squadron there, so they wrote their names all over. I have that book in the car actually right now.
But not but not the men you served with in Vietnam.
No, I've never, just that one.
Just the one.
I've never seen either.
I mean, I'm not as familiar with the Air Force unit descriptions. Haven't tried to have.
No, I never have, no, because I was in denial. I was in total denial until 2009, when I heard 2 college kids saying that all Vietnam veterans are liars, that they never had stuff thrown on, they weren't called baby killers. And I said, well, where'd you get this information? Well, our professor told us that. Oh, none of that stuff ever happened. You guys weren't called baby killers. You didn't have stuff thrown on you. That stuff never happened. So I became involved in it at that point. Before that, I was in total denial. I wouldn't even buy a hat. So I never contacted anybody, period.
Did you ever join anything like the VFW or VBA?
I'm a lifetime member of the VFW, a lifetime member of the DAV, and a lifetime member of the American Legion, and I'm a member of the 40 and 8.
All since 2009 or earlier?
All since 2009.
Okay, so not earlier. What about your family? Have you spoken to your family about your Vietnam experience?
Yes, I did. And when I came back there naturally, well, first problem was came back when the tornado sirens went off. I was flying around looking for a bunker. So I was in total shock there for a long time because of the rockets. But trying to talk to the family members was a terrible experience because my wife's sisters was calling me all kinds of stuff. And I tried to explain to her how could she be coming up with this stuff. She was reading these Bob Dylan books and other types of media that was anti-military, telling all these lies. And she was believing it, so I tried to explain to her, had not ever experienced anything, how could she be telling me anything when I've experienced all this? I'm talking from experience, she's not. So that sort of was dead end there, basically. So my family, they didn't believe anything I said.
Okay,
Nobody believed it.
Let me interrupt for a minute. Were you married when you went in the Air Force?
I was going to get married to Katie and got sent to Guam. So we had to cancel our wedding. And when I was in Guam, I got orders of Vietnam. So I told Katie, I said, I might have 9 days, the way it looks like. I can see you for 9 days. So I said, if you want to get married, it's up to you because I don't have any money. I use all my money to pay off my bills. So I said, you're going to have to do everything. Get the blood test, get everything. Go to the JP, get a JP wedding. So I said, you don't have time to answer me. You'll find out when I get there. So I got there, she had everything lined up. We got a JP wedding, been married 51 years, and she passed away 3 years ago.
Sorry to hear that.
But she was wonderful. I spoiled her. That's what you gotta do. You have to spoil your women. That's why
So that's why I was asking if you came home to a family.
Oh yeah, I came home and she supported me the whole time. That's one good thing about, having a good relationship with your spouse, that if they support you, I'm sure I was drinking a lot. She pointed it out, you're drinking a lot, So we decided to come up to a pact that I will work on a bad habit. That's how we called it. If she would work on a bad habit. Well, she thought she was perfect like I did. It's hard to remind them that they have a bad habit. So I told them I would work on quit drinking. And she needed to work on this other habit. So we both did that. Gave us a year to do it. Then we did it. Then the next habit was, quit smoking. It took longer. That was really addictive. It's like being a heroin addict.
Yeah.
And so, so I was able to quit the bad habits I had and revolve my life around my family.
Do you have children or grandchildren?
I have 2 children, and Johnny and Charlotte. And I had Charlotte had a endometriosis, and they screwed her up. She couldn't have children, had to have a hysterectomy when she was 27. So her family is her dogs and cats. And my son had married a little lady, Laura Schneider, and they have 5 kids, and they're wonderful little kiddos, and they're all doing well. The oldest one's not imaging, but an image tech, I guess, in a hospital. So he's
That's a big difference between image and hemorrhage.
Yeah.
The reason I'm asking is, have you talked to your children or grandchildren, or have they asked you about your Vietnam experience?
Well, no, but I wrote a book, so I figured they could read it. So I wrote a book, my experience. I started writing notes about 2009, and finally about 5 years ago,
Do they know you've written this book?
yeah, I gave them a copy. And,
Okay.
that they haven't commented on it or anything, so I don't know whether they read it or not, but
If one of your grandchildren asked you about going into the military, what would you tell them?
I would tell them if it's a girl, I would tell her to go in the Air Force, because she's not treated like a piece of meat if she was in the other branches. So I would tell her to go in the Air Force where she's treated like a lady. And I would tell the men, join the military, join the Marines, join the Army, whatever suits your fancy, because they're all there for a reason. We all need to work together, yeah. I would highly recommend them joining. They won't, I did already.
Well,
Yeah, I already did all that, they won't join, they don't want to join.
Just curious.
Yeah.
You gentlemen
Did
have
you
any?
stay in the military after Vietnam, or?
Yeah, I I stayed in, I decided to make a career. So I went ahead and cross-trained. After Vietnam, I decided I got to get out of the field there. So I cross-trained, became a photo interpreter analyst. And I was sent to these 544th, 548th, and spent my next 11 years at Intel. And it's so strange in a way because these Intel people, you know, they thought I was so strange, I didn't seem to fit in, they couldn't understand me. And the simple reason was I'm still a Marine, you know. I'm still acting like a Marine, I'm still behaving like a Marine. I told people, I say, you take care of your people, the people will take care of you. That's against Air Force management techniques, you know. So we clashed all the time in the Air Force because of my Marine Corps training, because they just couldn't understand me. You know, there's no camaraderie in the Air Force like there should have been. Flight line, there was a lot of camaraderie, but in Intel there wasn't, just pure backstabbing, you know.
Where did you grow up? Was it Nebraska or?
I was born in Kansas City, Missouri, and we left there quite early, moved around a little bit, and ended up in Indiana, Elkhart, Indiana. And so I went to Elkhart High School, and my junior year, I think it was, or my senior year, junior year, one of the 2 years, I think my senior year, my dad kicked me out of the house, so I joined the Marines. And I was in the Air Force a year, had a year of college under my belt, and Mrs. Yule discovered that I was a high school dropout. And I can't be a high school dropout in the Air Force. And so they accused me of fraudulently enlisting. And so her and I had a discussion about how many people actually read all that information they're given in basic. You give them 5 minutes to read a stack of information. I said, I didn't know I was supposed to have been a high school graduate. I said, I did well. What happened was I did really well on their tests. I excelled. The only other person that did better than me was a general at Offutt. Other than that, I had the highest score at Offutt Air Force Base, except for that general. And so that's the reason why they probably thought, because if I scored so well, then obviously I had to have a high school diploma. And so to get my GED, they wanted me to go back to school. And I said, no, I'm not going back to school. I've got a year of college already, you know, Central Michigan University, Michigan. So we went ahead and took those transcripts, submitted them to Elkhart, Indiana, and I got my GED. So the same people signed my GED are the same ones that signed my wife's graduation certificate. So they may not recognize it. Indiana did not recognize GED at the time. They were ordered to give me a GED, so I got what's called a military achievement degree. This way, how they solved the problem. Indiana did. So I'm proud of that. You know, I've got 2 college degrees now, but at that time I was real proud of that GED. Anything else?
Well, thank you very much for your service, for your
Thank you, I
interview.
appreciate
Do you
it.
have any questions?
Oh, I don't think so. I'm sure that once this is over, I'll probably think of a lot of questions, but
We can always do more, or do
right
it
now,
again.
I'm perfectly happy with the way things went. I think, you know, if I did stutter, you know, I've been